Hello, this is Heidi Vaughn. What you are about to view is a collector talk at Heidi Vaughn Fine Art in Houston, Texas. The talk is between the Mayor's Ambassador to the Arts, Lester Marks, who has been named one of the top art collectors in the world by Art News, and Catherine Anspon, the executive editor of visual arts at PaperCity magazine. The two had a conversation about collecting art at the highest levels, as well as the importance of supporting artists at the local level. The talk was offered in conjunction with the exhibition Objects from Lester Marks and Other Private Collections, a sale of secondary market works of art from some of Houston's most important art collectors, which was up for the summer in 2019. Among the objects for sale in the exhibition are blue chip works by Chuck Close, Jasper Johns, Pablo Picasso, Andy Warhol, Larry Bell, David Sally, Robert Barry, and Tom Wesselman. Without further ado, please enjoy the video.
As some gentleman said on the front row who's very knowledgeable, how much did you pay everyone to come out tonight? But I'm just going to interject. I mean, it's great. We have the art family here. It all starts with the artists. We've got collectors, gallerists, museums. I mean, famous, infamous, and thank you for being here then.
Well, I knew that it was going to be standing room only, and I just feel terrible about that. Yeah. What I didn't know is that half of the room wasn't even going to be able to see us. So I don't really know how we do this. Maybe panoramic, we go from side to side. But I would like to start out by thanking the people that are here tonight. I realize what it takes to get out of the house, get dressed, clear your schedule, fight the traffic on a weeknight, be here, have to deal with this crowd, then have to listen to us, then you're going to hopefully buy something, and then you're going to go home. And I know that takes a lot of effort, and my heart really does go out to you. I really appreciate the people that care enough about the arts to be here. I want to thank, of course, my wonderful dealer and organizer, Miss Heidi Vaughn.
Yay.
And I would especially like to thank her for her overly generous $25,000 speaking fee.
Now we're going to split that, right?
No, I did that. That's mine, baby. And, of course, my thanks to the divine Miss Catherine Anspon. And with that, I think we're ready to get going. I wish I could acknowledge each and every VIP, but however many people there are here, that's how many VIPs there are. You're all VIPs because you care about art.
And everyone it reminds me of going to Lester's house. I've been to some other collector's house. They're like, how many people RSVP? And then you get an extra overflow. Can you put out 18 plates and you have 24 people? The other people don't get plates. And we at Lester's house, just bring the buses. Everything's fine. It's okay.
More the merrier.
Yeah. Yes. Perfect.
So, what would you like to talk about tonight? Art or politics?
All right. Please, we were just speaking about that at the office. We're going to. That may be later after we hit the bar.
After more tequila, for sure.
After more tequila. Well, I think we'll start with a question that I really don't know the answer to. What was your first piece of art that you acquired? And when and how, and do you still have it?
The first piece of art I acquired, I remember the experience like it was yesterday. And I don't even remember what I did yesterday. It's just like it's happening right now. And it was a few years ago. The first piece was by the Art Guys.
Yeah.
And it was a flower pot that had been, a clay flower pot that had been turned upside down as a lamp. With a bowling ball was the footing, and of course there was a pole. I got it from Hiram Butler, and I really hate to show my age, but Hiram began on Portsmouth one like 2 blocks from here, Fort Smith at Kirby. And I remember that experience of the first purchase. So, like, I'd never had an experience like that. And I just thought I was the king of the world. I just bought a piece of art. And the adrenaline rush from 25 plus years ago, it just never left. So if you have not yet, and you don't have to do it from this show, although that would be nice, but if you've never bought a piece of art, you just don't know what it's like till you buy your first piece. And there's art for every budget. In this show alone, I think work starts at 400 or maybe even 200. 300. And, well, we did have a piece right here that was priced at $500,000, but it didn't sell, so I took it back home. If anybody wants to make an offer, it's a cause. We can talk later.
The cause.
I don't still have the piece. Unfortunately, my ex-wife, when we got divorced 20 years ago, she took the piece, but I do still have the invoice for $500.
It's interesting, and what we love about this is this reveals kind of 2 things. Like, to me, it reveals the first purchase is something you're continuing to do, support Houston artists, Houston-based artists. Because I like to say they're based in Houston, because these are really not Houston artists, because they could be showing in New York, they could be showing in Berlin. It's just an artist based in Houston. You're also supporting a gallery that's based here. There are a lot of people in New York, and they get to shop their New York galleries. We need to be part of the community. It's a really important message. That's why we're here tonight. And it's also as an interjection, because I just saw this the other evening when we all had a little party and watched the Keeper movie. I went in the back and I saw those great art guys' boots that the Height Like Mike and the party and the whole thing. Can you tell, like, that was a piece you underwrote, which is interesting.
Yeah, I don't really consider myself a collector. Yeah, I am, but, I like to consider myself an art activist. And collecting is one of the things I do. Yeah, that's one slice of that pie. Mentorship is a big thing to me. I'm proud to say that there's been some artists that I have helped throughout the years, and some of them have gone on to some really big things. And of course, their talent had nothing to do with it. It's the support I gave them. And so I just like to get involved and support artists through their careers. I learn as much from them as they learn from me. It's the circle between a collector and the artist. Well, there is a circle between the collector and the artist. When you look at a piece of art, when you get involved with a piece of art, you're really completing what the artist began. You are bringing your interpretations and your feelings to really kind of turn on the work of art, to activate it. And of course, when you do make the purchase, that completes the circle. So, what's the question?
Oh, we're talking about the art guys and the boots store.
In terms of being an activist and mentoring, I try and get involved in projects. And there's usually a little benefit to me, like some of you, and I'll get back to that one, but some of you may have heard of the Chinese artist John Wan. Wei Hong's not here, is she?
She's not.
Wei Hong and I teamed up many years ago. She asked me if I would help underwrite bringing John Wan to Houston for performances at Diverse Works. And she said, in return, he will give you 2 works of art. So, there was a little advantage there for me, and I got to know a great artist in person. As far as the art guys, how many of you guys, show of hands, know who the art guys are? So,
Right.
so almost everyone. Okay, so Jack is short, Mike is tall. Now, Jack is shorter than me, way shorter. Because I'm quite tall myself. But Jack wanted to, he wanted to build a pair of boots to make him as tall as Michael Galbraith, the other partner. And they were regular, Texas black lizard boots, but the heel was about this tall. And the deal is that Jack would wear the boots for any type of public appearance. He didn't wear them when he was going to the shower, but public appearances for a year, he would be in those boots. And he also kept a diary of the places that he went with these boots. And so at the end of the year, they presented me with this gorgeous vitrine with the boots and a video that plays that shows the night that this whole program was kicked off. There were dancing naked girls.
It's true.
This is back when, times were fun. This was at Art World headquarters. Art Guys headquarters, and it was just a blast.
That was a fabulous evening. So sometimes when you have a work, just an interjection. The work, and you're knowing the artist, it stands for more than just something. It's not a marketplace. It's an experience. This whole thing, and just seeing those boots brought it all.
Yeah, getting to know the artist. I don't think that it's necessary in any way to know the artist to admire a work of art. For one thing, it'd be kind of hard to get to meet Goya. It'd be kind of hard to meet Gauguin. Kind of hard to meet Monet and a few others. Having said that, yeah, it's fun though when you can meet the artist. It's not always pleasant. Just because someone does great art, but most of the time, and I'm mostly talking about Donald Judd here. And the same could be said about many dealers. That would really be juicy if I threw out some names.
We've got to kind of keep a lid on
But yeah, it's fun to get to know the artist. So that's part of what my whole life of collecting has been about, is establishing relationships with artists when I can, and establishing relationships with dealers is just as important. And the dealer, in turn, what you want to find is a dealer who forms long-lasting relationships with their artist. And Heidi does a remarkable job. She's one of the newer dealers in Houston and has risen in a short period of time to the very top. And the way I got connected with Heidi, because I've known all these other dealers all my life, and here Heidi comes in new, and what's happening is every show that she's putting up is like my favorite show. And I said, Heidi, how is it this is happening? We share a brain. We share an art brain. So she does a really good job of maintaining relationships with really good people.
That is so kind. Thank you so much.
And really, you've had a number of shows where all the work went to new homes, and a lot of that has been transformative for the artists, and they've gone on to get studios or getting homes, and it's just really interesting. And sometimes I think we need to sort of look at people here with a fresh eye, and you're doing that and getting people excited.
It does the artist.
Yeah.
So I'm standing next to one right here who is in your collection, and I think you've bought something out of every show I've had.
Yes.
It really helps the artist so much to be able to say that they're in the Lester Markstick collection, to be perfectly honest.
Thank you. He's not only a great artist, which I do collect, but he also has one of the most important jobs in the city. He is the new director of What's the official title?
Curator of Public Art for the Houston Airport System.
Yeah. And everyone knows all three.
I mean, he has really big shoes to fill because Tommy Gregory, who had that position until recently when he and his wife Casey moved to Seattle, did a fabulous job. Really, about the only person I know in the city that could fill those shoes is this man right here. He's going to be great.
Hear that, Kathleen?
Yes.
And
I love it. Well, let's see here. And then I'm thinking this is a question, it's really interesting because, again, we also publish in Dallas, the magazine. Now, Dallas is, so many of the major collectors in Dallas, other art news collectors, they rely on consultants. Now, for you, it seems, you don't want an intermediary between your relationship with the artists, and you do have scouts, people you're close to. Heidi, I know Robert Manley, now at Phillips. Now, can you speak a bit about how your approach and like why I don't believe there'll ever be a consultant for the Marks collection.
well, everyone has to do what works for them, but I've never felt the need or even understood why someone would need an art consultant. You see, it's really simple. You don't need an art consultant because if you'll just buy good art, you can't go wrong. And it's kind of a laugh line, but there's a truth to that in contemporary art that really good art is whatever you feel is good. That's the mark of acceptance of excellence, is you like it. And if you are going to buy it, then you need to buy what you like. Now, you want to make sure that you're paying a reasonable price, and you want to make sure that certain things are in order, and I'll cover those. I could do it. Cover it. I'll talk just for a minute about like 6 things, the only thing I'm going to read. But in terms of consultants, no, art is my life right now. I was a car dealer for 30 years, and
the only car dealer I ever knew that had a Donald Judd in the office. I was like, wow, this goes with your industrial strength office carpet.
But I do art full time. I'm actually an art dealer myself, but no, I would never use a consultant. No one needs a consultant. Let me share with you. It won't take but a second. Just a couple of real brief, and I do mean brief, tips to collecting. Always do your research before making a purchase. That's number 1. Number 2, never do research before making a purchase. So, I thought a long time to come up with those 2. And really the truth lies someplace in between. Buy more from the heart, but as the price begins to escalate, you do need to make sure that you're getting value for your money. You don't need to do any research when you're buying entry, mid-level art, but as you and some of you I know in this room are serious blue chip collectors, and yeah, I do more research as the price point escalates. Okay, here we go. Network. Become involved in Houston's art organizations and events. When I Googled Houston Visual Arts Organizations, I was given 8,611,000 sites. So this is probably my most important point, and I'm singing to the choir because you're here. But to learn about art, you simply have to immerse yourself in it. To get involved, get excited, have fun, and that brings me to this that I brought with us, which kind of sums it all up.
I just hung that in the bathroom.
Yes. No. So it really is.
Did everybody see that?
That should have been the cover of the yeah, expose yourself to art.
The more exposure, clothed or otherwise, that you can give to art, the better off you'll be. I mean, it's completely changed my life. I mean, it has given me something to live for. It's being surrounded by something that's larger than yourself. Someone has spent they have used their creativity for you. And it just makes me feel really good to be surrounded by art. Now, not everybody might want to take it this far, but I consider the art in my collection my friends. Has anyone here ever seen, oh God, don't fail me now, that television show, oh my God, anyway.
The names go first.
Anyway. Okay, I'll tell you what happens if someone can help me out. It only went on for one season last year, and the world had come to an end, and there was only one guy left on Earth, and then he found some others.
The last man on Earth.
Okay. That's always the easy things.
Charity grants too.
War of 1812 thought.
Okay. I'll be headed for the exit.
Exit through the gift store, right?
But for those few of you that saw it, he would take balloons, since he was the last man on Earth, and draw a face on the balloons and then put it next to on this couch while he was watching television. Well, I consider my art to be living people. So I'll take a favorite piece of art off the wall and sit it down while I watch my favorite show, America's Got Talent.
AGT Tuesdays.
Or, as last night, the night before, a Keeper documentary. So, you know, I really relate to art as something that, like I said, enriches your life. Something bigger than oneself.
And you also have art a la Sistine Chapel. You've got art in the ceiling.
Yeah, that's, oh my God, one of my pet peeves. And my parents, my mom passed away 3 months ago, but my parents,
Okay, thanks.
and this is something I want to touch on right after I say this. I want to talk about my roots. My parents are collectors, not crazy like me, but I've heard them say so many times, we don't have any place to put it. They've huge blank walls, but to them the house is full. I have art. I've got a large home, and I've got art on every square inch. And that includes the floors and the ceilings. I just bought a Deborah Roberts, who is we don't have time to talk about any individual artist, but I bought a piece by Deborah Roberts. It was about 4 feet by 9 feet. It's a huge painting, and I had no place to put it. So it's now on our living room ceiling. And I keep the art handlers in Houston very
Oh,
happy.
that's true. I remember the stories too.
We've
Some of
come
these.
up with all kinds of mechanisms, magnetic locks to hold things on the ceiling. We've had to take out windows. We've had to take out doors. My house used to be 5 bedrooms. It's now 3 because one of the bedrooms was, well, 2 of the bedrooms were turned into galleries, and one bathroom, the tub, everything is gone now. It's a gallery. So,
And I want to ask, have you ever, like, because your house feels like you're in the middle of a big Cornell box, right? I mean, it feels like
yeah,
that.
there's objects every
And
place.
there's
That's right,
also
magical
something,
objects.
You know, magical, and there's also something, your house is kind of like the Cornell box equivalent of the Barnes collection, right? Like,
Yeah.
being there,
Yeah.
like, nobody really wanted the Barnes collection to move. It needed to be there where it was assembled.
It's interesting that you mentioned the Barnes collection. I got something, kind of bragging, I got something in the mail yesterday, a flyer from the Barnes collection about their new Bill Viola show. Bill Viola was the father of narrative video. Nam June Paik used video first as sculpture, but Bill Viola used it first to tell a story. And the Barnes is opening Bill Viola, and my piece, which is in an edition of 3, is on the cover of the. I thought, whoa, that's my piece, man! But I love loaning out pieces too. I don't even know where some of my pieces are right now. I mean, because they go out for a year, 2 years at a time. I've got one work, I know it started in Denmark, but I don't know where it is right now. I got another work that's traveling around the United States. You know, I just hope some of these works eventually get returned to me, because I keep immaculate records, and that's one of the things I wanted to tell you as
Practical tips, yeah.
as collectors, to keep records and start with your first piece, and keep files, because you just don't realize where you might end up over time. And even if you only buy a handful of pieces, those records will be invaluable to you one day, as Heidi can tell you. And aren't I
As
good?
an appraiser, yeah, you
Aren't I-
want to see good files when you're working.
Aren't
with
I
someone.
good with my files?
A+.
I mean, I have files going back a long time. And now I do, you know, I save things on the computer, but I still use hard copies. Because a lot of the, you know, the purchase invoice is one document, but there might be articles about the artist, there may be special instructions anyway. Keep records, however you want to do it, and do that from the start.
I mean, it's interesting, and, you know, announcements, I mean, people still do announcements, catalogs, books, and going to your library, you have all those materials.
Oh, yeah, it would just be a nightmare not to keep records.
To do that. Well, what other
I'm going to tell you, y'all want to hear a personal story? I had never told this before, and I got interviewed a couple of weeks ago, and I told this story that I knew they were going to ask me, as I've been asked a million times, you know, how did you get into art? And, you know, I tell the story about my parents were collectors, and I went to, when I was 13, I went to Andre Emmerich Gallery with them, and they were looking at Hans Hofmann's, and we were in this private room, and what an impression that made on me, which kind of flies against one of my points, that art is not an elitist activity. Yeah, we were in a private room, okay, but the concept of art being elitist, it's really an American hang-up. It's throughout most of the world, as KK, our videographer and brainchild of the group, can tell you that this country, because it was founded on the puritanical religious beliefs, has always been a little uptight about art. The government doesn't support it, and people just have a weird feeling that art is for the elite. It's not. It's for everyone, and that's Alton is going to be doing a great job in bringing some of the best art Houston has to offer into the place where so many hundreds of millions of people a year see it, and that's into our airports. So my personal story is, I grew up in a small town outside of Clear Lake called LaPorte, and I never fit in. And I said at my mom's funeral in the eulogy, I said, my mom never lied to me, not ever in her life, except once, that when she was driving me to kindergarten for the first day, she said, everybody will like you. And they didn't. I never fit in. We were the only Jewish family in the town. The town was about 10,000 people. We were the only Jewish family. I was the smallest person in my grade. At the time, I had a kinky afro way before it was cool, which my high school girlfriend could tell you, standing there. It's nothing more than a coincidence that my wife is in Mexico. And I've already proposed to one person here tonight. Anyway, so I had this curly hair, tiny little guy, Jewish. We were the richest family in the town, which isn't saying much, but you know, we were. And so I had pretty much everything going against me. And I really feel like creativity comes out of strife. You don't have to have had strife to be creative, but it helps. And it's a means of dealing with what's thrown at you. And you know, I mentioned earlier about art being greater and larger than oneself. And you know, I think I started into art at a very early age just by finding a respite away from what was going on as a 10, 12, 15-year-old. Or a 5-year-old. I had a rough life.
It was another world.
But that life brought me to where I am now. And so that's why people that have had kind of a challenging life or childhood, they frequently turn out to be some of the most creative people.
And people that are inclusive and, you know, sensitivity, sometimes that's a gift. One of our other friends, McKay, said, you know, it's sort of a gift to be an outsider because you're able to see and understand really what goes on. And then, in a way, you become an insider, but you can have a bigger understanding than someone that's just kind of in the middle of something, right? It's interesting.
So, I like to bring people through my home. This is interesting. How many have been to my home? Wow. Oh my God.
You got anything missing?
How many are these?
It's like
Jewelry missing?
It's like I told my dad, who's in Massachusetts right now, about the talk tonight, and he said, how much are you charging per person? He cannot understand why I bring thousands of people a year through the house to do all these art talks. I did one, I've got a radio broadcast on Sunday. Why do I do all this if I'm not getting paid for it? I said, well, I don't know, you know. I just haven't found a good way to monetize it. But I'm open to suggestions. How about a donation jar? Heidi, you want to pass around a donation? I'll tell you what, the donation jar will be if you'd like to buy a piece of art. It doesn't have to be one of mine.
No, I love this. Now, in terms of your collection, like this is another thing. It seems so intuitive. I mean, like it evokes a feeling. Like you have a Cornell box and the art guys. Like how do they go together, or is it? But to me, they all seem to go together. But it's sort of an inexplicable, it's a very personal collection, you know?
Yeah, that word, that exact word was used by a friend that was over last night. He said it's so personal. He said, you know, I wasn't sure at first, what does that really mean? That of course it's a personal collection, it's mine, I bought it. But I think what he meant is that it reflected a kind of a cohesiveness, because the collection in itself is very eclectic. I collect anything that moves me, but it's all united by some guiding principles. I like to, and so many of you have heard this, but I like to collect artists who are able to turn the simple into the sublime. Adela's light piece in the corner is a good example of the simple computer light tubes being turned into something sublime. I like to collect artists who are able to turn the weird into the wonderful. And what better example than right there, an electric chair. Not exactly your first thought when you think of what's going to sell for $30 million. Oh, I'm going to do an electric chair. But Andy Warhol turned the weird into the wonderful. I like to collect artists who turn the ordinary into the extraordinary. A good example of that is one of my favorite artists, Robert Rauschenberg, the most famous artist ever from Texas. Graduated with Janis Joplin in her class at high school, Port Arthur. And he really is a master, or was a master at just kind of throwing ordinary things together and creating something extraordinary. And then when you put those three together, what you get is a collection that is greater than each individual part. The sum is greater than the individual parts added together. And so it's just always art that moves me, and it has to be thoughtful. That's just my personal view. You may choose to only collect flowers, and by the way, I'm a big collector of flowers. You change through your life as to what you collect. But for me, when I say I collect flowers, there's got to be something. I'm not just looking for a landscape. I'm looking for an Andy Warhol flower or a Lisa Ludwig flower made out of sugar, or a piece that is here by Jeremy Rohn, who made the flowers out of baking paste. So, cool. You know, yeah, it's an eclectic collection brought together by a very thoughtful basis.
Yeah, and there are always layers. I mean, if something's...
It's the pieces have to talk to each other. That gets more and more difficult as you add to your collection. But everything has to sing together. That's why they play certain instruments together in a symphony. And that's why I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm kind of one day in my life after losing my mother, I'm beginning to think about mortality and what that means. And I could part with the art, but because you can't take it with you, although I'm planning to. Or the alternative, I may just decide to stay alive forever. I haven't decided which I'm going to go with. But, so at some point you've got to get rid of your earthly possessions. So what I was going to say is, I can get rid of the art, but not the collection. It's, that's everything is exactly where it is for a reason. Only I know, but I know. And if a piece is missing, then it's not just a piece missing. There's a whole, it's just like the symphony again. When it's time for the bang, if it doesn't come, you've ruined the whole production.
And it's all sort of they're all threaded together in a way. I just remember, you explained you were having a gathering and you're waiting for an artwork and you tried to tell them, well, this is going to take days to figure out where it's going to go. I mean, it's not just like, okay, we're going to do that. And then I guess we'll touch on now, the reason we're here tonight is you are deaccessioning. And I know that there's also a sort of, it's kind of like a stream. The stream always needs to get, refreshed by fresh water. We're always, it's sort of a cyclical. Now, how do you decide when you want to deaccession and get something, kind of refresh, or how are you thinking about that? And I know that Heidi is a great source for placing work, finding new homes, also working with the auction houses. But how do you decide? I mean, are you going to be you have other Warhols? I mean, it's like you're collecting, no doubt, intuitive. Are you sad when they're going, happy they're going to someone else, thinking, how do you think about it all?
It's really pretty easy to answer that one. I love all of my art just like my children. But like your children, at some point, they grow up and you've got to let them go. And sometimes, the answer, it's really quite easy. The works that I've selected for this show, and this is kind of part 2.0. This show originally opened a couple of months ago, and we've just been...
The price lists, by the way, are in the back. We're on our third price list, because every time we sold things, we brought in new things. So if you were here a while ago, it's not the same show.
Completely different, 100% different. The reason that question is easy to answer is the way I decide what I'm willing to part with is that I have more than one work by that artist. It would be rare for me to put something in this show that I don't have other works. There are occasions when my wife says, "You've just got too much stuff in on the counter here." Says, she is a physician. She doesn't understand art. I'm sorry if there are other physicians here. She's under the mistaken impression that it's a house that we and I am telling her it's a museum that we live in. So we have that running battle, and it's either duplications or work that Penelope has said it's just too much in that spot. It's just
Now it's interesting. Now, do you ever forecast that you're going to be adding an annex? Would there are you going to...
Yeah, let's see.
The garage.
I think the two questions I'm asked most often when people come over to my house is, does anyone live here? Yeah, not only does anyone...
I never knew you. I would never, I've never seen a third bedroom.
My wife and I, our 8-year-old daughter, and now, believe it or not, we have a 3-month-old cockapoo. Which,
so you're going to work with you're not doing annex or...
So the other question that's most frequently asked to me is, why don't you build a separate space for your art? And I would be so happy to. I'm just looking for the person to fund it. Because nobody that's made that suggestion has ever offered a penny.
We'll have to keep looking.
And good God, go with Brad and Leslie Bucher. Because, they've got their own warehouse full of art.
Eventually they moved in there.
Yeah, they did what, they did the ultimate.
So it's probably more interesting to live in a Cornell box, right? I mean, it's...
Yeah, I would never move, seriously, I would never do something, I would never move my art to a warehouse because, like I said, how could I sit on the couch watching America's Got Talent?
Well, I wonder, I'm sure that there are some burning questions. Is there anything else that we should talk about before we take
I just want to say that that art provides, at least for me, it has provided the answers to many of life's mysteries. And I think, that is something that maybe you can take away, although everyone in this room probably already realizes that, but it's become a very meaningful part of my life. Let's see if I have anything else. Let's take some social media. When I started out, there wasn't such a thing as social media. And by the way, you can reach me on Instagram. I don't guess we have a... Well, it's Lester Mark's art collection. Really appreciate it if you took a look at Lester Mark's art collection. And so social media now is so hugely important for the arts. If you're going to be getting into art, well, you're already into art. Social media is a big deal.
What is
Instagram
that?
is, I started using Instagram. My Instagram manager is standing right here, one of the best artists in Houston, Felipe Lopez. He keeps my Instagram up and going. I've got like 21,000 followers now,
And you started
we're just
recently,
starting.
yeah.
Almost 22,000, so.
I would have more, but
200.
he's been sitting on his ass.
I believe the term is called watercolor painting. I think that's what that is.
Yeah, he's been doing some of his own stupid art and not working on my Instagram.
It'll be featured at Lester Mark's house in 2 weeks.
Is that a pop-up there? I don't know. Here we go.
Yeah, I called him an idiot child last night.
I wasn't even there last night. I was there 2 nights ago for the Keeper talk.
It wasn't you, really. It was Uriel.
Oh, that's right! Yeah, he set the kitchen on fire.
That's a whole other matter. While the wife's out of town with my little girl, we did set the kitchen on fire, 3 nights ago? And that was real scary. Smoke is not good for an art collection. No, not at all.
No.
You never want to be a big-time collector, be in the bathroom taking care of business, and hear the unmistakable sound of a fire extinguisher followed by 2 people yelling, "Lester!"
A lot of us, I attended the film screening the following night.
Yes. Never a dull moment at Casa Marx.
Never a dull moment.
Okay, questions?
Questions, all right.
So the fire incident makes me wonder about how you deal with appraisers and insurance and...
God, that's a great question. It's Michelle Barnes, who is being recognized this year by none other than the most important art organization in Houston. Well, kind of. Houston Arts Alliance, who, well, you all know Houston Arts Alliance. They take the little tax money and spend about $16 million a year on helping to support art and artists in Houston. Michelle Barnes is being recognized at our gala this year as one of our 3 honorees.
Yay,
Yeah.
yay.
Congrats.
And the gala is coming up this fall. Remember
Yeah,
seeing
October. And Michelle also is the founder and president of one of my favorite organizations that I'm on the board of, Community Artist Collective, which is primarily supports the underserved and the African American and people of color, people in need, and those most underserved. And Michelle goes into the public schools and brings art education to the kids. So back to her question, and by the way, Barry is our mayor's partner, Barnes and Turner. They're both lawyers. So insurance is a big deal. I just would advise you to make sure that you get insurance on your art. Keep it up to date. art goes up in value. It can go down. It's rare, but it can happen. So you want to just want to keep your appraisals up to date, and again, that comes into records. Chubb and AIG are the two acknowledged specialists in the insurance industry.
Oh, Huntington T. Block.
And
Huntington.
yeah, that pretty much does it.
Yeah.
But anyone can insure art. At State Farm, whoever.
Yeah, now do you, like, who does, like, the collection management? Do you have it on a database? I mean, there was that top secret.
Oh yeah, that's pretty much buried underground at the Pentagon.
Okay.
It's in a lead vault. It can't be penetrated by anything.
Oh,
I can't
that's
even.
good. There'll be no hacking of that.
Yeah, I'm really worried about the Russians. The Russians are like, they're out there.
We all are.
So I've got a question here. Just recently, this is like unthinkable. Nobody steals art. They steal your jewelry and your. But
Mr. Busby might have a thing
Yeah.
to say about
exactly.
that.
But I mean, social media and all of a sudden art being stolen.
I guess I'm just a trusting
I have
soul.
never really worried about that.
Yeah, no, I've had probably 30,000 people in my life come through the two houses, and I don't think I've ever had a piece taken.
Well, the people were more modern collectors. They went for, like, what, Bonnard and
Yeah, modern.
Yeah.
So, like, you're
The problem with contemporary art a lot of times is not the danger of it getting stolen, but the danger of it getting thrown away.
Yeah.
Because so many great works of art have been mistakenly thrown away. But it looks like a pile of nothingness.
Yes, I mean, I love that.
And that actually happened to me. We don't have time for the whole story, but I had a piece of art, an outdoor installation. That my yard man who did a little too many drugs in the 70s, he thought it was a metal kite made out of metal. It weighs a couple of, maybe 100 pounds, that was installed in the tree by cables, steel cables. He cut the kite out of the tree, and it got put into a dumpster, and Drew Robbins was driving by my house and called me and said, "Lester, your kite is in your dumpster." I said, any of y'all know Drew Robbins? I said, "Drew, yeah, I'm not," because we weren't living there at the time. I said, "I'm not falling for that. You're just trying to get me to drive over there." And he said, "Lester, I assure you, I have much better things to do. Waste your time on this." So I drove over, and sure enough, this kite, which I had first located in a sculpture park in western Massachusetts, had shipped all the way to Houston, then had crate works installed up in this tree. And I said, "Ozzy, why? Why would you cut down the kite and throw it away? It's so heavy. I mean, did you think it was a real kite?" And he said, "Well, that was the problem. It was so heavy, I figured it must have crashed into the tree." That's a true story.
And it's still there, but I notice now it's kind of on the ground level.
Yeah, because Harvey took away that tree, so I lost like a huge oak tree in our front yard. So
But the kite remains.
the kite's still there.
The lady in the turquoise?
Yeah, hi. My question is, do you see your home being turned into a Houston landmark in the near future?
I don't know.
Better neck and neck with the Orange Show, the Marx collection.
We'll see.
We'll see. Yes. I'd say, why not? Are there any more questions?
Les, Chubb does the program that's akin to a home equity loan off of the art. Do you ever use something like that?
Yeah, the Sylvia Solly, who actually came tonight and left because it was too crowded, She is the one that I credit with giving me that idea. I now have a line of credit secured by art. And I started that just a couple of years ago. And
Interesting.
the banks are more and more moving into that area. There's some banks that are really there. There's others that are moving in that direction. So you have to, you have to find the right bank or the right insurance company or the financial agency and yeah.
Other than Chubb, who would you recommend?
U.S. Trust, Northern Trust, Amity Bank. Those are the first three that come to mind.
We want to see a Cornell credit card. Just an idea. Another question?
Go ahead.
What's the rate of your collecting these days? Do you buy pieces every month? How many?
More often than that.
That would be a slowdown.
I got one in the car for him.
I got one wrapped back here for him
Yeah.
as well.
I've got a little bit of an addiction problem. I say all you need to have to begin being an art collector is the desire. And that's also what they say in 12-step programs. All you need is a desire. Because I've got an addiction. I don't know if there's a 12-step program for it or not.
Have you ever had an urge to make art?
Oh yeah, I'm an artist. I didn't even
We have
mention
some
that.
of his pieces in the room behind you.
I'm actually quite a good artist. and my work sells really well. I'll never be a big time artist because people think of me as a collector, and so that's a little bit of a problem when you become an artist later in life. But I do abstract photography without the use of Photoshop or computer manipulation. I take everyday objects and transform them into things of wonder and beauty. And I always say, and there's some of my pieces here, that if you can recognize what my source image was, I'll give you the piece. And I'll even tell you what my source image was if you want to know badly enough, but then I have to send you to Siberia for life.
Right.
So it's your decision. I've shown with Deborah Colton. I've shown with Seb Hamagian in San Diego and San Jose and San Francisco. I've shown with New Gallery that doesn't exist anymore. I've shown with Heidi. I've shown with Barbara Davis. I've shown with Gus. I'm not picky. Anybody that'll have me. I'm pretty much like any artist. Hey, if you'll show me, I love you. You're my favorite dealer. Yeah.
How do you feel about like performance art? Do you have like a similar experience that you have, similar passion that you have for collecting? Like how is that expressed? How do you like mentally like collect like a performance art?
That's a really difficult question. Well, I love performance art, and I kind of am the kind of person that would like to take something home. For instance, I collect Hermann Nietzsche, German artist who was the father of the Viennese Action Movement. And he's a performance artist, but he produces memorabilia from his performances that you can purchase. And so that's a lot of performance artists now are monetizing their performance with works that can be acquired. But not everything has to be bought. Well, that's what my wife tells me. I don't really believe that. Ushio Shinohara is another great one. Ushio is the Japanese artist in his late 80s that produces post-abstract expressionist works by dipping his boxing gloves into paint cans. And I actually have a pair of the boxing gloves along with to works of his art. So he's very much a performance artist, but again, he spins things off. So, you know, that's cool. And someone had a question, was it someone right next to you? But any other questions? I knew there was another hand up. Yeah.
Do you have any advice for new gallery owners or new dealers?
Oh my God. Jeez. Yeah, whatever everyone has been doing, don't do it. You know, there's just so many things wrong with the way galleries are operated, in my opinion. They should be operated like movie theaters. Art is for entertainment. So if I had a gallery, you know, my big nights would be Friday and Saturday. I'd be open, you know, from like until midnight, just like a movie theater. You know, I would have dinners. I would bring speakers in. I mean, just the model for the typical art gallery is broken. So truly, don't follow it. Heidi, as you can tell, is taking a new approach. Talks, tours, secondary market art, primary market art, shows that don't have to end at an exact date. Yeah, so, you know, my biggest problem with art galleries is they emphasize the false idea of elitism, because many of them, the gallery dealers, are somewhat unapproachable, and or their hours are very elitist. They're like bankers' hours used to be in the 80s. This is 2019.
No, that's true. I mean, how many people work till 5 o'clock? I haven't left the office.
Do you know how long it takes to get any place in Houston traffic? I mean, and the galleries closing, you know, when they do, you know, they should, on the weeknights, they should close at 10, and on the weekends at midnight.
I'll just add, we're open until 6, but if you want to come, please, just call me or text me, because I'm here, I left here last night at 10 o'clock. I'm here all the time, and people come in after hours all the time.
And that is true. That is true. Heidi is often here until late at night.
Well, it's the Lonnie. You know, you come here and you're having an experience, you have a talk. I mean, people want to connect over the art world.